The doctor said my heart is failing. 40 years of grease, black coffee, and 4 in the morning shifts finally caught up with me. He said it like it was news. It wasn't. I've known this diner would kill me since I was 39 years old, standing over that flat-top grill at 2 in the morning, sweat running into my eyes, telling myself just one more year. That was 40 years ago. But that's not what keeps me awake in this hospital bed. It's not the heart, or the tubes, or the beeping machine counting out whatever time I've got left. It's a plate of eggs. I ran Whitfield's Diner on Route 9 for 38 years. Corner booth, cracked red vinyl seats, a bell over the door that never stopped ringing. I knew how everybody in that town took their coffee. Frank Delgado black, no sugar, refill before he asked. Old Mrs. Kowalski decaf. After 6 p.m., she'd tell you why every single time. I flipped eggs for truckers and preachers and teenagers sneaking out after curfew. I fed the whole town, plate after plate, 40 years of it. I never made my wife breakfast. Not once. Not in 31 years of marriage. On our wedding morning, I told her that would change. I remember saying it standing in her mother's kitchen in my one good suit, still smelling like her mother's hairspray. And I told Eleanor, once the diner's on its feet, I'll make you breakfast every single morning. Eggs just how you like them, not too soft. She laughed and said she'd hold me to it. I meant it when I said it. I want that on the record. I meant every word. Eleanor used to say it like a joke early on. You feed strangers before you feed me, Tom. She'd laugh when she said it. I laughed too. I thought there was time. I thought the diner was temporary, a few years to build something. Then I'd slow down, then I'd be home for supper, then. There was 1 year, our 5th, I think, when she stopped saying it as a joke. She said it flat one morning, no smile behind it. I don't remember what I said back. I remember I was already halfway out the door, keys in my hand, and I think I said something like, soon, and I think she just nodded, the way you nod at something you've stopped expecting to change. The diner opened at 5 a.m. I was usually there by 4:30, grill hot, radio low. Eleanor would still be asleep when I left. By the time I got home, it was near midnight, and she'd be asleep again. Some weeks, I think, we passed each other more than we spoke to each other. She'd leave a plate for me in the fridge, covered in foil. I'd eat it standing at the counter, alone, reading the day's receipts. I fed 1,000 people breakfast every week of my life. I never once made her a plate. There was an anniversary, our 10th, or close to it, when she planned something. Candles, a real tablecloth, a roast in the oven. I remember walking in past 11, and the candles had burned all the way down to nothing, wax pooled on the good tablecloth, and she was asleep at the table with her head on her arms. I stood in the doorway for a long while before I woke her. I don't remember what I said. I remember she didn't cry or yell or anything like that. She just got up, put the roast away, and went to bed. That quiet was worse than any argument would have been. My son Danny grew up on that counter stool. Third one from the end, right by the register, so I could keep an eye on him after school while I worked the dinner rush. He did his homework on that counter. He ate his meals on that counter alone most nights, because I was 3 feet away but 100 miles gone, taking orders, running the register, calling out to the cook. He was right there. I want you to understand that. He was right there. And I still wasn't with him. I remember his 9th birthday. Eleanor brought a small cake to the diner because I couldn't get away, and we sang to him between the lunch rush and the dinner rush, standing by the register, a few regulars joining in because it was easier than not. Danny blew out the candles fast, like he wanted it over with. I was already looking past him at a table that needed clearing. I think about that more than I'd like to. I used to tell myself the diner was for them. That's the part that sits heavy on me now. I told myself every plate I made was for my family, for the roof, for Danny's shoes, for Eleanor's medicine when her arthritis got bad. And that was true. It was also not the whole truth. Somewhere in there, I stopped knowing how to sit at a table and just eat with the people I loved. I only knew how to serve. Eleanor passed 11 years ago. Cancer, quick once it showed itself. In her last month, she was too weak to eat much of anything, and I remember standing in her hospital room. This room isn't so different, come to think of it, holding a spoon of soup up to her mouth. Her hands shook too much to hold it herself by then. It was the first meal I ever fed her, spoon to mouth, in 31 years of marriage. She looked at me and she said, "Well, you finally learned?" I didn't know what to say to that. I still don't. I sat with her most nights after that, in that small room, and I remember thinking, this is what I never gave her, just sitting. Just being still in the same room while she ate, or tried to. 31 years. And I learnt it in her last month. Danny's 46 now. Got his own family, a wife, 2 girls, a house 40 minutes from here. He runs an insurance office. Steady hours, home every night by 6. I used to think that was a small kind of life. Sitting in this bed, I think it might be the only kind worth having. For a long stretch of years, Danny and I didn't talk much. Not a falling out, nothing dramatic. Just distance that built up quiet, the way it does. Holidays? A phone call now and then? Birthday cards? I used to tell myself he was busy with his own family, and that was fair enough. But I know some of that distance started at that counter when he was 9 years old, eating alone 3 feet from me. He visits most days now, sits in the chair by the window, doesn't say much, neither do I. There's a lot of years between us that don't have words attached to them yet. 2 weeks ago, he brought his daughters. My granddaughters 8 and 11, quick, loud, full of questions. The younger one, Sadie, climbed up on the edge of my bed and asked if I used to be a chef. I told her I was a cook, not a chef. There's a difference, though I couldn't tell you exactly what it is anymore. She asked what my favorite thing to cook was. I opened my mouth to answer, and nothing came out. The older one, Mara, asked if I made pancakes for my kids when I was young. I said, sometimes. That wasn't true. I don't think it was ever true. Danny was standing behind them, and I saw him hear that answer, and he didn't correct me, and he didn't agree with me either. He just looked at the floor. 40 years behind a grill, 40 years of eggs and bacon and coffee and pie, and I sat there, trying to remember one single meal I'd made just because someone I loved wanted it, not because it was on the menu, not because a trucker was waiting, just because. I couldn't think of one. Danny noticed I'd gone quiet. He didn't say anything. He just reached over and took my hand, the way you take the hand of someone who's lost, even though we were both sitting still in the same small room. Last week, Danny brought me dinner. Not hospital food, real food, in a container, still warm. Roast chicken, the kind Eleanor used to make, with rosemary and lemon. He said his wife made it, though he'd watched her do it, wrote down the measurements himself. He pulled the chair up close to the bed, and instead of leaving it for me to eat alone, he sat down, and he ate his own plate, right there next to mine. We didn't talk much. He asked about the diner sometimes, old regulars, whether I remembered this or that. I did, mostly. I told him about Frank Delgado's coffee order, and he laughed, said he remembered Frank from when he was a kid, that Frank used to slip him a quarter for the jukebox. I'd forgotten that. It was good, remembering something together instead of alone. We ate slow. The chicken was good, simple, nothing special about it, except that someone I loved was sitting 3 feet away, eating the same meal at the same time, for no reason at all except that we were both there. Near the end of the meal, Danny set his fork down and just sat with me a while, not eating, not talking, just there. I didn't know what to do with that kind of quiet at first. It took me a few minutes to understand it wasn't empty. It was the opposite of empty. I don't know how many more of those I've got left. The doctor's numbers aren't generous. But I keep thinking about that chicken. 40 years. Eleanor used to say I fed strangers before I fed her. Is the one I didn't cook myself. I spent my whole life believing that my son sitting on a plate was the same thing as sitting down and sharing it. Eleanor used to say I fed strangers before I fed her, not because anybody taught me. I spent my whole life believing that putting a meal I didn't have to was the same thing as sitting down and sharing it. It isn't have to rush through. I know that now, not because anybody taught me there, but because I finally got a meal I didn't have to make, didn't have to serve, didn't have to rush through. But I got one. I just got to sit there. That's the part I keep coming back to. With my son here, listening to this machine count my heart out. But I got one. Not the diner. That's the part I keep coming back to. Lying here, the regulars, listening to this machine count my heart out. 9. Not just one plate of chicken, not the money. Chair pulled up the regulars. Thank you for listening to my years story. On Route 9. If you just like one plate of chicken, subscribe button and drop a comment. Pulled up Take close. Care.